I could never decide whether Mad Annie was murdered because she was mad or because she was black. We were living in southwest London at the time, and I remember my shock when I came home from work one wet November evening to find her collapsed in the gutter outside our house. It was 1978, the winter of discontent, when the government lost control of the trade unions. Strikes were an everyday occurrence, hospitals ceased to cater for the sick, and uncollected rubbish lay in heaps along the pavements. If I hadn't recognised her old plaid coat, I might have ignored her, thinking the bundle in the gutter was a heap of discarded clothes. Her real name was Ann Butts, and she was the only black person in our road. She was a well-built woman with a closed expression and a strong aversion to social contact, who was known to enjoy a drink, particularly Caribbean rum, and was often to be found sitting on the pavement in the summer, singing gospel hymns. She'd acquired the Mad label because she pulled strange faces and muttered to herself as she scurried along in a bizarre dot-and-carry trot that suggested a child playing Rydercock horse to Banbury Cross. Little was known about her circumstances, except that she'd inherited her house and a small independent income on her mother's death, and apart from a menagerie of stray cats, which had taken up residence with her, she lived alone. It was said that her mother had been madder than she was, and that her father had abandoned them both because of it. One of the long-term residents of Graham Road swore blind that Mrs Butts Senior used to shout obscenities at passers-by and twirl like a dervish when the mood was on her. But as Mrs Butts had been dead some time, the story had undoubtedly grown in the telling. I didn't believe it any more than I believed the rumours that Annie kept live chickens inside her house, which she killed by boiling, feathers and all, for her own and her cat's supper. It was nonsense. She bought her meat, dead, at the local supermarket, like everyone else. But her close neighbours talked about rats in her garden and a terrible smell coming from her kitchen, and the story of live chickens was born. I always said she couldn't have rats and cats, but no one wanted to hear the voice of reason. The same neighbours made life difficult for her by reporting her regularly to the local council, the RSPCA and the police, but nothing came of their complaints because the council couldn't force her out of her own house. The cats were not ill-treated, and she wasn't mad enough to be committed to an institution. Had there been family and friends to support her, she might have taken her harassers to court, but she was a solitary person who guarded her privacy jealously. At various times, health visitors and social workers made unsuccessful attempts to persuade her into sheltered accommodation, and once a week the local vicar knocked on her door to make sure she was still alive. He was always cursed loudly for his trouble from an upstairs window, but he took it in good part, despite Annie's refusal to go anywhere near his church. I knew her only by sight because we lived at the other end of the road, but I never understood why the street took against her so strongly. My husband said it was all to do with property values, but I couldn't agree with him. When we moved into Graham Road in 1976, we had no illusions about why we could afford it. It had a Richmond postcode, but it was very definitely on the wrong side of the tracks.